Alright, there's the file. So we are recording, yay, it's final chapter of Utopia, of the religions of the Utopians. And there are contradictions. Some will be just circumstantial contradictions, as I put them before. Others are, more direct. There are several sorts of religions, not only in different parts of the island, but even in every town. This is contradicted later. And that is not a circumstantial contradiction. I mean, well, it can be depending on how technical you want to be with the definition. But no, I would say no, it does, in fact, it is in fact a contradiction. Some worshipping the sun, others the moon or the planets. Some worship such men as have been eminent in former times for virtue or glory, not only as ordinary deities, but as the supreme god. Okay, so so some of them basically have what we would consider more pagan worship, sun, moon, planets, or past heroes. Okay, but it's just interesting how it is put, not only as ordinary deities, but as the supreme god, right? Yet the greater and wiser sort of them worship none of these, okay, but adore one eternal, invisible, infinite, and incomprehensible deity. Okay, so you've got basically the, let's say, physical or temporal. Let's just go with the visible versus an invisible God. Okay? But then it also says here, indeed, though they differ concerning other things, yet all agree in this, that they think there is one supreme being that made and governs the world, whom they call in their language of their country, Mithras. They differ in this, that one thinks the god whom he worships is the supreme being, and another thinks that his idol is that god. That's not a small difference. I actually do want to adjust this a little bit. That's right, I don't actually want to... It's not so easy to do it. Do what I want to do with the... There we go. With the pen, unfortunately, with the stylus. Yeah, and it's also... There's several sorts of religions, but then it's like, oh, well, no, they all actually believe in the one thing. It's like... I mean, technically, you can't argue that religion is the specific collection of laws and such that define the proper means of worship and such, and base things like that. It's like, okay, I can understand that. And to a degree, then, yes, there can be several sorts of religions, even though they all believe in the same thing, but the belief in that what that thing is differs. It doesn't make much sense, but it also has later, we'll get to that, is 2/3, 3/4 of the way through this chapter, where it's like, oh yeah, they all worship the same thing, so they all go to the same temple, but the temple itself is generic. Anything that's different, you gotta worship alone in your house, privately. That's where you can have the discernment there. So it's like, so it's one religion. I mean, later it is better put as different sects. Okay, so it's like, okay, that makes more sense, but it is just, I don't know, maybe I'm also being too technical with some of this stuff as far as, technically this is a frame narrative. It is Raphael trying to tell you these things, so yeah, he's just making mistakes. Maybe, but it still is some of these I see as inconsistencies such that, okay, so you stated it wrong and then changed yourself later, but Raphael never speaks with a correction. He is always just speaking. We also have this. By degrees they fall off from the very superstitions that are among them, and grow up to that one religion that is the best and most in request, and there is no doubt to be made, but that all the others had vanished long ago. So again, we do have this, like, there are multiple religions, except that no, there aren't. It's all come down to one, except that the religions themselves are still different, because it's also, as I said, a religion you can define. The term religion, you can say, has the definition, I'm not sure if this is the actual definition, but it does have the definition of having the laws, okay? The laws of that religion. The laws of that religion would include what the god is. Is it the sun, the moon, the planets, or a former hero, or an invisible being? You can't say they're the same religion if they differ in that way. Because certainly the sun, you can say, hey, the sun gives us life because it warms us and it, allows the plants to grow. The moon doesn't do that. The sun does. The planets don't do that. The sun does. A long dead hero doesn't do that. The sun does. You can't Now take that and say, oh yeah, and this still applies with the moon. No, it's a different religion then. Even if certain traditions would be the same, it still is what you are identifying as the god is part of the religion. It would have to fall under the definition of religion there. So no, these are different religions. But no, it gets worse. So despite this being 1,516 years, being published in the year 1,516, or written, that whatever it is. Despite that, it does describe here that Raphael and his companions were the first to introduce them to Christianity. I'm not so sure about that one. I don't remember if it even properly described where Utopia is, as far as was this part of the New World. If it was, okay, now that makes some sense. Was it somewhere else, though? I'm not sure. All I can really remember, and maybe it did say it, I'm just not remembering, was that he had been in the New World and had encountered various peoples, but that he then managed to get back to the Old World and eventually made his way to where they've encountered him, where Moors encountered him. But I can't recall if he specified that he encountered Utopia in the New World or in the Old World. So I just don't remember. But still is. They are who introduce Utopia to Christianity. And there's some interesting things that are stated where it's like, that's not actually what you should be believing. They do get this right. So it was, he and 3 others, so total of 4. 2, there were originally 6 that had tried to get to Utopia. So yeah, in theory, this should be the group that had been left in the New World and just went exploring and found them. So, okay. Among the 2 that had died, though, were the priests. Okay, so they didn't have access to a priest anymore. But as they did try to share about Christianity, some did want to convert. And so we therefore could only baptize them, not having priests, so that to our great regret, they could only partake... they could not partake of the other sacraments that can only be administered by priests. This is actually accurate. Baptism, there's a specific thing to do for baptism, but it can be done by... Actually, I think it would be any Christian. It's not limited to certainly not a priest. You must also have been baptized. I'm not sure. I could also believe you would also need, up through confirmation, where you're recognized as an adult in the church. See that being the case. But yeah, other things such as confirmation, communion, and all the other sacraments, yeah, that you need a priest. And this I actually do find interesting, because I can definitely see this being a real debate. They have had great disputes among themselves, whether one chosen by them to be a priest would not be thereby qualified to do all the things that belong to that character, even though he had no authority derived from the Pope, and they seemed to be resolved to choose some for that employment. But they had not done it when I left them. So it's basically they wanted a priest, but that kind of thing, it does need to follow from the church. Otherwise, it would be heretical. That's a worthwhile debate to have, especially because these people, they may be especially eager for it, but there's also that aspect of, have they been properly instructed? Because that would be part of the reason why you'd want a priest approved of by the church, because that is somebody that should also be a missionary, and so would be properly educating them. Raphael is not necessarily that. And based on his understanding earlier about certain biblical arguments he was making concerning the treatment of the thieves, and some that we will have later, I don't really think that Moore wrote him to be very theologically sound. Well educated in it. But he'd also described this, so when the converts, he being newly baptized did, notwithstanding all that we could say to the contrary, dispute publicly concerning the Christian religion, with more zeal than discretion, and with so much heat that he not only preferred our worship to theirs, but condemned all their rites as profane, and cried out against all that adhered to them as impious and sacrilegious persons, that were to be damned to everlasting burnings. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's like legitimately, yeah. Like, if they brought a missionary in, the missionary would probably be more apologetic and less polemic. This is basically describing somebody being very polemic. But it still is that missionary priest would be doing that. That is actually the expectation here. Sorry, kind of is. But here's where it gets very interesting, is one of those, this does seem to be a contradiction, or at least a circumstantial contradiction. Upon his having frequently preached in this manner, he was seized, and after trial was condemned to banishment, not for having disparaged their religion, but for his inflaming the people to sedition. Here's the thing, though, that they have an ancient law that no man ought to be punished for his religion. Okay, they try to explain this. That they are free to endeavor to draw others to it, their religion, by the force of argument and by amicable and modest ways, but without bitterness against those of other opinions. But that he ought to use no other force but that of persuasion, and was neither to mix with it reproaches nor violence, and such as did otherwise were to be condemned to banishment of slavery. So it's basic, and what really comes out as the theme here is, oh yeah, we have this very important ancient law that you must respect and tolerate these other religions. Just tolerate all religions here. By the way, if you actually profess your religion too much, we banish you. It's like, we punish you for that. And it even gets into for their own religions. You can't even practice them publicly or argue, debate them publicly. If you do that, you'll be punished. Perhaps only culturally, but it's, as opposed to like this, banishment, but no, you'll be punished. It's like, oh yes, they value tolerance, religious tolerance so much that whenever you try to practice your religion openly, we condemn you for it. It does also explain that part of the reason for this is it actually goes back to the founder of Utopia, Utopias. And some of the reason here is so stupid as well. He found part of the reason he could easily conquer Utopia when he did was because across the island, which remember would likely have less area than the state of Ohio, based on the size that was given previously. And only, 53, 54 cities? Were so divided among themselves that it was easy to conquer them because it was all just separated by the different sects. One problem with that is, this is supposed to have like a 1700-year history. I don't remember how well it would have been 1700 years ago. But even at the time of Christ, you actually had a fair amount of religious tolerance amongst people. Yeah. I'm sorry, but it is kind of true that there would have been plenty of places that there would have been many religions there that would have been living peacefully because why wouldn't they? And if somebody did invade, they would unite to fight against them, unless it is a co-religion. Unless the invaders are co-religionists. Like in that case, then, yeah, you might see some deciding to side with the invaders, but you'd also see some that's like, no, I don't want to be invaded, and so fight against it. So it's... Historically, I find that claim doubtful. Because it's like... religious tolerance is present in the ancient world. In fact, not only that, but one thing that... I wish I could remember where it was. But one thing that I saw mentioned about pagan religions, once I heard that, it's like, oh, that explains so much about mythology. Like, especially Greco-Roman mythology that I know somewhat well. And that is that they would assume the religions of those around them, or rather the mythologies of those around them. So that's why you have, like, Venus has multiple origin stories. Apollo, I'm pretty sure, has several. Bacchus definitely does. Just trying to think about any others. None are immediately coming to mind. But yeah, they would have these different stories. And it's like, okay, well, we'll just combine it all in there. And yeah, it all therefore makes sense. That's like, this is how we're expanding our borders. Because, like, yes, we are, in fact, the same religion. But you can keep worshiping your guy. we'll keep worshiping our guy. It's just that our guys know each other and are friendly. It's like that's what they would do. And it's like once I saw that one thing said and it clicked for me, it's like that explains why there's so many competing and contradictory stories in the mythologies. Because one is the story that, let's say Apollo, that Rome had, the other is a story that Greece had, or Sparta had versus Athens, and so on. Well, these both survived. You'd still have one potentially be dominant, at least as far as whoever was compiling the mythology for us to read today, but you still had but back then you still would have had some competition between them. I'm just trying to think, because it's also like Hercules was actually... We would typically associate Hercules today with being a demigod, just a very strong man, the son of Zeus and all that. But there was actually a Hercules cult in ancient days. So you'd think then that, they either were worshipping a hero who had actually lived, or were worshipping a god, not a demigod. Well, how would you legitimize that faith, that cult, when you're trying to expand and grow out your mythology to also incorporate these people? We'll say, okay, he's the son of our strongest god, Zeus. He's one that, oh yeah, he was a man that walked around, but at his death-ish, he had himself put on a pyre so that the mortal portion of him would be burned away, and the immortal portion would ascend up and become a god. So that way it validates that your god is a legitimate god, son of Zeus, still was human, did great things, but still exists and is part of our pantheon. You did have religious tolerance back then. And paganism is, in a weird, convoluted way, one example of that. And it is also funny to think about that as far as how, thinking about that as part of the definition of paganism is then this idea of just assuming the other mythologies into your own, trying to mix them all together to provide a kind of cohesion. It is just interesting then to see how that would have worked back then, such as forming the political alliances, getting that cult of Hercules, the towns that follow that, into your own, to work with your own nation, but also how some of them may survive today. Yeah, so just that thought is ended. Moving on. Yes, because this was... I'm just criticizing the whole idea that Utopias would have done this, because it's like they should not have been so divided for it to be that great an issue. So it's also therefore like with the sun, worshipping the sun, the moon, the planets, or these heroes that was described earlier for the various religions there, they could still have had a single cohesive religion where they're all different gods, or like I could see the sun, the moon, they see it as the same god, just in different forms. And it's just, they make a cohesive story, so they actually would be all at peace with each other. Because it's still one religion, just worshipping differently. But is it really one religion? Because you'd have the different cults within it that, yeah, you wouldn't have that whole belief in one supreme being, though, because you would have them being separate, because the stories would be separate, the religions would be separate. There's just something that allows the cohesion around them, the common mythology. Think that makes sense, and is what I'm trying to say, but saying poorly. Moving on. So part of the reason Utopias made this law was also because he believed that, supposing that only one religion was true and the rest false, he imagined that the native force of truth would at last break forth and shine bright, if supported only by the strength of argument and attended to with a gentle and unprejudiced mind. Hang on, I should add. Should add another highlight there. That Utopians also believe that, maybe all religions do still come from the one God, but it's just like everyone got it a little differently, or just don't understand it the same way, and so then that there's only one true religion, that therefore you can, just through debate, arrive at that. Yeah, that's not how it works in history. Definitely not. There have definitely been some religions that know that they go to war. It is not through argument, it is through bloodshed that they spread. and not their own bloodshed, but the bloodshed of others. So, yeah. And there's also the idea that, okay, well, you're claiming just by argument. Well, there's also things like population, because that's another way that if you assume that a people always pass down their religion to their children, then by having a large number of children, you can outpopulate and therefore outspread other religions. So it's like this is not a very intelligent claim. And there's also, how do you know it is true? It's like, it's just, oh, well, by having all these arguments here that we'll arrive at the truth. It's like, okay, but you're assuming that there is truth there. What if they're all false? If they're all false, then you can't arrive at truth, can you? You would need a revelation of the truth. So again, it is a very faulty idea that's being given here to Utopias. And then we have this. He made a solemn and severe law against such as should so far degenerate from the dignity of human nature as to think that our souls died with our bodies, or that the world was governed by chance without a wise overruling providence. So basically, not only is the law that, hey, you cannot punish somebody for their religion, which, dude practicing his religion, punish him under a different law, but it's still, we're punishing him. But it's also then, oh yeah, we also do have, it's like, despite all that religious tolerance, guess what? You have to believe that there's an immortal soul, and you have to believe that, well, that there is a providence, that there is a God that is shaping things. That's not just random chance. It's like, so you're not religiously tolerant. You have a very strict definition as to what you accept as a valid religion or not. Yeah. Then there's, I'm sorry, it's just, I am a little tired, but it's also just some of this, it's just tiring. It's just like, come on, this is so stupid an argument here. I get why somebody would make it. That doesn't, but even though I can understand it and why this is what you would go to, it still is a ancient laws that no man ought to be punished for his religion. By the way, we don't recognize religions that don't believe in this, which means then that they are not, that those people can be punished for what they believe because they don't have that protection. It's like contradiction. And the funny thing is that I should also acknowledge that there are some practices that are not religious. Like, one thing that I have seen pointed out, and it's funny because they even agree with it, is that the Satanists, like actual like members of the what is it, the Satanic Temple? Is that what they call? They actually do say that it's not a religion, and it kind of makes sense because basically all they do is try to be anti-Christianity. When you're defining yourself as that, it makes sense that cannot fall under the definition of a religion. But notice we still tolerate that here in America, whereas in Utopia they would not be able to. Okay, and it does explain that part of the reason why he believed this is for certain moral benefits to the state and community. For there's no doubt to be made that a man who's afraid of nothing but the law and apprehends nothing after death will not scruple to break it through all the laws of his country, either by fraud or force, when by this means he may satisfy his appetite. But if he's afraid of the law, because if a man who's afraid of nothing but the law, so he is afraid of the law, why would he break it? So it's like, in the sentence itself, you have this contradiction that if he's afraid of the law, he shouldn't be breaking it. And if he's not afraid of the law, then yeah, I mean, okay. But it's also this idea that, hey, you have to believe that you'll be punished in order to act morally. It's like, sure. Basically, there's no such thing as a true atheist in the Western world because their whole lives they've been brought up in a world that has been shaped by Christian morality. So you may reject the religion, but you still benefit from it, and your mind and sense of morality has been shaped by it. But there's also kind of the point here, is that you could have an atheist in Utopia who is still raised in Utopia and believes all the things, as far as the law is concerned, the morality of Utopia. They would still believe all that, so they would conduct themselves fully in accordance with the law of Utopia. It's like, this is not, this argument is false, because it's trying to claim that morality can only come exclusively through practicing religion. But you can be influenced by religion without practicing the religion. And that influence can be just from the culture, and therefore is a moral influence that keeps you obedient to the law, which, again, they are afraid of the law. So, yeah. And then there's this, which is part of that whole, I did say it earlier about, yes, you can have your religion. By the way, you can't practice it publicly. They take care indeed to prevent their disputing in defense of these opinions, especially before the common people. But they suffer and even encourage them to dispute concerning them in private with their priest and other grave men. So in other words, you want to argue that your religion is better than another's. That's what this dispute is. And you want to defend your own religion against saying that, hey, yours is worse than mine. Oh yeah, you can do that, but only with a priest. And only in private. But hey, we love all religions. You're good here. You just need to believe this stuff. But hey, we're happy to have you here, and we're very tolerant then. No one shall be punished for it. But if you do this in public, well, we can't have that. Yeah, this thing. You're protected if you do this, except all these other things. They despise and laugh at auguries and other vain and superstitious ways of divination. An augur is somebody who is a diviner. So much observed among other nations. So it is, actually that's true at this point in time. That shouldn't, well, okay. If we're in the New World, then yes. It would make sense that you would have that there, but the Old World, not so much. Yeah. But of great reverence for such miracles as cannot flow from any of the powers of nature. So, they recognize and are impressed by miracles. Most people are. This really isn't that significant a statement. Yeah, I do want to check though. Where I am in here. Okay, here we go. It does talk about that there are those who will be very dedicated to their religion, to their mythos, to the point that they make themselves of constant service. Nor do these only serve the public, but they serve even private men more than the slaves themselves do. For if there is anywhere a rough, hard, and sordid piece of work to be done, from which many are frightened by the labor and loathsomeness of it, if not the despair of accomplishing it, they cheerfully and of their own accord take that to their share. But they said earlier that they hold no trades in ill esteem. And yet, hey, I'll do that because you don't want to. And I'm sorry, I'm going to classify that all things being trades, right? Like that, even the, cleaning out of the chamber pots and such. Sorry, that is what I was just stuck on getting that word. That's still a trade. That kind of cleaning, I would still count that as a trade. And it's like, hey, none are in low esteem. And hey, it also mentioned how it's so important that, everyone does these things that are necessary for the state, for the community and such, and that would be necessary. But it's like, oh no, we got these people who are so thoroughly dedicated to the religion that they will do this for just anyone, because some people, private citizens, they don't want to do it. It's like, but no one holds in low esteem, so it's, or no one holds other things in higher esteem. So that may have been how it was worded, but it still is they don't want to do this because it's unclean. Just shorthanding it to unclean. That means that there is a sense of esteem, that there is lower and higher esteem. So many contradictions. Also, just mention that of these people, there are two sorts. Some live unmarried and chaste and abstain from eating any sort of flesh. Another sort of them is less willing to put themselves to much toil and therefore prefer a married state to a single one. And as they do not deny themselves the pleasure of it, so they think that the begetting of children is a debt which they owe to human nature and to their country, nor do they avoid any pleasure that does not hinder labor. And so they also do eat meat. And I did skip over some stuff there. But it still is, yeah, they got these two peoples, well, these two groups. One that is, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, and I don't remember how exactly it was put in here, but they do invite on themselves damn, I'm not spotting it. Oh, affliction, there we go. They do invite basically an affliction on themselves, that, hey, I will take on all the hardship so you don't have to, because they feel that this perpetual employment, as it also puts it, is a good way to serve God. And then they also have some where it's like, yeah, I still got some worldly interests, though. Like, I still got the whole want to be married and have kids, still want to be able to eat meat, but it's still that they will do more labor, they do take on more labor, and is also, as far as the meat goes, it does explain here that, therefore eat flesh so much the more willingly, as they find that by this means they are more able to work. So it's, but by eating meat, I have more strength to be able to work. It's like, okay. The Utopians look upon these as the wiser sect, but they esteem the others as the most holy. So it's like, again, we're getting this judgment here that, oh, those that will still, get married and eat meat, they're wiser. But those that are just completely dedicated to the work and are more afflicted, take on more afflictions, they're the most holy. It's like, I don't think that's fair, because why would you, if ultimately the purpose is to serve God, then going to the ultimate degree would make you wiser than those who do choose worldly things. I just, this dichotomy here doesn't really make sense, but still is more generally, they try to describe that, oh yeah, Utopia views all people equally and so all that, but it's like, no, they do have preferences one to the other. We also have this, that again is the, hey, you can have any religion you want, just never practice it. At least not publicly. There's nothing in which they are more cautious than in giving their opinion positively concerning any sort of religion. So you can't even say that, hey, I think my religion is better than your religion. You can't do that. That's not allowed. Oh, yeah, and then we get to the priests here, which, oh man. Only 13 in every town, by the way. One for every temple. All that is incumbent on them is only to exhort and admonish the people. Okay, so it's like right there, it's like, okay, so that's the responsibility of the priests. That, if they see something wrong, and like people not doing what they should be doing according to, the religion there, the nonsense religion. It's like, okay, that makes sense. For the power of correcting and punishing ill men belongs wholly to the prince. Again, we have this contradiction, because I'm sorry, admonishing somebody is correcting them, okay? That's saying, hey, you're doing wrong, I'm admonishing you for it. That's applying a correction. Legitimately reading this, I was really starting to think, is this just a bad translation? Because you have a child, does something wrong, you admonish them for it. That is correcting them, okay? So you can't say that, oh yeah, only the priest is also doing this. Now, if it was instead, like, no, the priests are actually trying to hold up good examples while the prince is responsible for punishing. It's like, okay, that would make some sense then. Except that's not what's going on here. Because it does even say, if they do not very quickly, so basically it does describe that you can be excommunicated by a priest if you're really out of line, and that there is not any sort of punishment more dreaded by them, the people, than this. Because it's loaded with infamy. So no, they are absolutely punishing people, even though that's only supposed to be the prince. But, it continues, if they do not very quickly satisfy the priests of the truth of their repentance, they are seized by the Senate and punished for their impiety. You're not punished for your religion. But, if you say something that makes a priest unhappy and you can't reconcile with them, we're going to punish you formally. We're going to punish you politically. Gets better. They use all possible methods, the priests, to infuse very early into the tender and flexible minds of children such opinions as are both good in themselves and will be useful to their country. What I didn't have highlighted here is the education of youth belongs to the priests, yet they do not take so much care of instructing them in letters as informing their minds and manners aright. So it's completely saying here that, yeah, the priests are the ones that educate the children. Okay, yeah, that can make some sense. But in morals that will serve them and the state. And not in letters either. So that letters being how to read and write. So, well, at least that isn't a priority. So that does technically mean that Utopia might be an illiterate people. I mean, some children may, some children might not be literate. But an issue is also that lacking literacy is a good way to control people, because then they can only know what is told to them. And also, if they do have some level of literacy but it is low, then that makes them incapable of learning of their own volition, especially from sources that are supposed to be of greater difficulty. So like how Project Gutenberg does actually describe this as being, Utopia as being at college level. I'll be honest, I mean, and I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this before, it's really only the sentence length and kind of odd structure to the sentences that makes it at all difficult to read. I mean, some vocabulary stuff, that's not too bad. And not very common either. So, like, to me, it's like, I don't see this as being college level. I could see this as being high school level, but not college level. And yet, it still is kind of that point, that if you are only educated at, say, as far as literacy goes, at an elementary school level, you could never read Utopia. Okay? Or at least you'd find it very difficult to, so you'd be less likely to. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's also this concerning the priests. If they should happen to commit any crime, they would not be questioned for it. Their punishment is left to God and to their own consciences. For they, the people, or magistrates, do not think it lawful to lay hands on any man, how wicked soever he is, that has been in a peculiar manner dedicated to God. Continuing at the end of this paragraph, with other arguments to this effect, nothing of great consequence to the public can proceed from the indemnity that the priests enjoy. So the priests are free from any consequences of any crime they may commit. It's like, oh yeah, I mean, it's like, well, there's, so few of them, and really, how bad could they ever be? Because, they must be perfect. They must be so good of men to even become priests. It's like, they're still men. Now, yes, you do expect better of them, but if a priest commits a crime, it's still a crime that was committed. And you're also, now you very much have a caste, a class system or caste system. Well, no, it would be a class system, because a caste system does imply you can't move between them. A class system, you technically can. But this does indicate that they do have a class system in Utopia, and a very powerful one. That's like, oh yeah, you can't be prosecuted for any crime. So that means that a priest could go around killing people, could go around raping people. No problem with that. No problem at all. In theory, if a priest were to go out and take all the food from the market so no one else had it, started hoarding, nothing could be done about it. Could violate every rule that they have, nothing can be done about it. No, I mean, crimes should be prosecuted. And it also is like the whole thing with how they were talking about the very few of their crimes have any prescribed punishment, so they can just decide whatever it is. That's not equality under the law. This is completely inequality under the law. Yeah, they also talk about how, the priests will go to war-ish. Before any battle, they will kneel down and pray. It's like, okay, that makes sense. And I don't remember if it said they will continue to pray during the battle, but once they see that victory is coming to their side, when the victory turns to their side, they run in among their own men to restrain their fury. Hey guys, I know you're doing really good and you got great energy here, to just go at it and make sure we're winning, which we need to do, but can you tone it down? It is so stupid because it's completely... it's sabotage. It is interfering with the military's efforts to win, to run up and try to calm them down. Okay, because even if you want to say, oh, but, it's just the energies, it still is. This is damaging to morale. Okay, it still is. Because now it's instead of you trying to do what must be done to win, you now have to pay attention to somebody else who is not there to ensure your victory, who is not telling you things to ensure your victory, who is telling you things that can interfere with it. Okay, it's stupid. It is truly stupid. Alright, now we get to their temples. I had already mentioned this before. There's nothing to be seen or heard in their temples in which the several persuasions among them may not agree. For every sect performs those rites that are peculiar to it in their private houses. Nor is there anything in the public worship that contradicts the particular ways of those different sects. So again, hey, you can never be punished for your religion. By the way, you cannot practice your religion publicly. I mean, it does force you to wonder, what if you were to just practice it in public? Would that then be oh, well, you did this bitterly? It's like, no, I was celebrating my religion. I can't do that publicly. There are ways that you can celebrate a religion publicly that is obstructive, is interfering. So something like doing a parade that you don't have a permit for, because I'm assuming the parade would be blocking traffic. It's like, okay, yeah, you need to a permit for that, because it also means that, yeah, you can say that at this time on this day, traffic will be blocked there. You can need a detour and get proper signs up and all that. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. But this is like, nope. If it comes out of your house, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. It's also this I had to highlight, and hang on, I just want to check where I am in this. Okay. There, how near am I? Okay, I'm pretty near the end. At least in my notes. All the people appear in the temples in white garments. It was stated earlier that all they have are white garments, so they do most value the whitest of garments. Okay, so... and as I point out, then, that means they would be doing things to try to make their garments as white as possible. But it is supposed to be the just natural color of the fabric. But this is like, no, they have a Sunday's best, which does indicate that there is a, that they may have you're wearing a Sunday best, because it has to be the white garments, not any other garment, which might still be, which may only be off-white, okay? So, okay, but if it's all in white, then that means that you do have this property that is important. Because what happens if somebody would go in and take all your white garments? So now you have to go in, let's say wearing, something. I'm just trying to think, what kind of colors do you get from sheep? Is it all white? But let's just say that that's gray. Okay, that's sufficiently off-white to be gray. So now you're going to stand out. So what can you say? Well, somebody went in and stole my clothes. It's like, well, this is Utopia. There's no such thing as theft. But the priest's vestments are party-colored. And both the work and colors are wonderful. They're made of no rich materials, for they are neither embroidered nor set with precious stones, but are composed of the plumes of several birds, laid together with so much art and so neatly that the true value of them is far beyond the costliest materials. So again, we have a contradiction. This is more circumstantial contradiction, but still a contradiction with how it's been stated earlier that they don't value things like gold. Because they say, oh, well, the gold has no... Feathers have no value. There's no value to these feathers. There's nothing you can do with them. Gold at least sticks around. You can have that thing for years. The feathers are going to decay. Eventually. They can fall apart. It'll take time, but that's going to happen. Gold is more permanent. So there's a greater value there. And just as it does say, laid together with so much art and so neatly that the true value of them is far beyond the costliest materials. So somebody, a goldsmith, an artisan with that, is imparting the same kind of value to the gold when creating an ornament. So you have all the same concepts of what should and should not be valued, but for certain things, it's inverted, saying, no, we don't have value there. This is why Utopia is so frustrating to read, and also various related political doctrines to what is being described in Utopia, that it requires an inversion or a rejection of certain things in one place, but another place, no, this is exactly what you believe. It's... Okay. Anything else in this? The next thing that I have is, I think is after... Yeah, it's... Okay. Oh, yeah. We finally get when this prayer is ended, they all fall down again upon the ground. So this is just describing the end of the temple services. And after a little while, they rise up, go home to dinner, and spend the rest of the day in diversion or military exercises. So we finally get a reference to there being military exercises. Wasn't mentioned earlier, but is now. And then that's actually where it ends as far as the description of Utopia. Now we just get Raphael continuing to talk on his own. Thus have I described to you, as particularly as I could, the constitution of that commonwealth, which I do not only think the best in the world, but indeed the only commonwealth that truly deserves the name. In all the places it is visible that, while people talk of a commonwealth, every man only seeks his own wealth. But that where no man has any property, all men zealously pursue the good of the public. Why do you assume that? It's like it's constantly... Everything about Utopia, it is based on they are ideal persons by the ideals that Utopia defines. That there's no imperfection among them, except there is, because they can't, like the dude who's banished. Okay, I mean, it's like it is Utopia. Technically, I once heard, I don't know how true it is, that Utopia comes from the Greek for nowhere, but is still just an impossible place. Because I mean, it's like why must you believe that if you don't have any property, that you will therefore be concerned with the common good? It's like, but you still are hungry, so you're still going to do things to ensure you eat. Maybe it does also mean that other people eat as well, so you are serving the common good there, but you want to eat. So you're going to do things so you eat. You want to be warm. You can do things so you are warm. You want to have a roof over your head. You can do things to ensure you have a roof over your head, and so on and so forth. Okay? You still have all these personal interests. Sure, the common good, well, your personal interests, especially for survival, are going to be common, so you can do things for yourself that by producing a surplus benefit all. That is true. But that's not to say that, oh, it's all because they don't have property. It's like these are not connected to each other. One thing that I actually put in my notes is, it's more so born of something later that he says. I think it was in one of the earlier videos I mentioned about with like critical race theory, the concept there, and there are other critical theories as well, that it's let's just view all of something from the point of view of this being the critical element, right? Raphael is basically a critical money theorist, that he believes that all things revolve around money, therefore all evil revolves around money. And so, if we get rid of money, then all evils go away. It's like, that's not true, though. And some of the examples he used are not... It makes sense in that view, but don't make sense in reality. I don't remember if this is an example, but let me just read it. It's the next highlight. What justice is there in this, that a nobleman, a goldsmith, a banker, or any other man that either does nothing at all, or at best is employed in things that are of no use to the public... he clearly does not understand bankers. Not to say that they're all good, plenty are not. But yeah, no, bankers are very valuable. Should live in great luxury and splendor upon what is so ill acquired. He's just assuming that, oh, these people have wealth. That means they must have gotten it badly. It's like, you don't know that. There's no evidence that it's just a claim. And a mean man, a carter, a smith, or a plowman that works harder even than the beasts themselves. Why is he not using the beasts then? And is employed in labors so necessary that no commonwealth could hold out a year without them, can only earn so poor a livelihood and must lead so miserable a life that the condition of the beasts is much better than theirs. Except that if it is so necessary, there's going to be a lot of people doing it because it's necessary. I mean, somehow that will be encouraged. Now, he does go on to mention stuff that I can believe this is the case. Now, if you have, like, feudal lords, that they would try to do things to in the law, get basically the pay that they must give the serfs working for them less and less and less. It's like, okay, yeah, I can believe that that's a thing, and yes, that's a problem. But that doesn't mean that the feudal lord is useless. And I mean, things he was saying earlier were also basically concluding that, oh yeah, they're just useless people. It's like, not necessarily. I mean, it's like, can we at least acknowledge case by case basis? Because it can also be things like, yeah, maybe it is these mean folk that are tending the land, that are actually taking care of the crops, but it might be the Lord that decides what it is that they're planting there, or has figured out the best way to plant it, that figures out the irrigation system as well to put that in there. It's like, the Lord might, can be the manager for them and is doing things to make it more effective. That makes them incredibly useful then. But nope, it's basically all these people. I mean, a nobleman is, what that would be, somebody who owns the land, has people working for them. But still, it's like, there can be other things that they must do. I was like, the magistrates are kind of like the noblemen. The magistrates of Utopia are like the noblemen here. The priests are even more than the noblemen. A goldsmith, it's like, what's your point? I mean, I already talked about, with the feathers. It's like a goldsmith is going to be way more, is going to be producing something of more value than the people making the garments for the priests in Utopia. Only because it's permanent. And a banker, it's like, do they not understand that bankers were giving loans back then? Like business loans? Like, that's one thing that I once saw as an explanation, and it is funny, for the negative stereotype for Jews being so wealthy of bankers. I actually saw an explanation for this, and it's got nothing to do with the Jews. It's actually got to do with the Vatican. Because at one point, the Vatican decided that because usury is wrong, I mean, that is just the case, it is wrong. But they decided that for that reason, no loan could be made with more than 2% interest. The Jews, and I know that YouTube's going to get pissy at me because of this, but it still is. This is the actual history. At least what I remember learning for the history of it. Jews don't follow the Vatican. So they were like, we'll give you higher interest on these loans, but they were riskier loans. So the Christian bankers, they would be confined to that 2%. I think it was 2%, might not have been. So it's like, oh, yeah, that's a risky loan. I don't know if we can trust you starting that business, so we're not going to give you that loan. But the Jewish bankers would be like, yeah, sure, we can do that, but it might be at 5% interest, 10% interest, 15% interest. Which, yeah, if it's at a very high interest, it's going to be less likely for the person to pay it back. But at least what they are paying back, the banker's going to get more out of it, where it's like, yeah, I got to get all I can before I collapse in case you fail. But if you succeed, then they make even more money. And plus, it's say, hey, I've already got a relationship here. You've succeeded. I can keep working with you, so we both benefit from this. So that's actually where a lot of that Jewish banker wealth came from, was from them basically just being free to do business. While the Christian bankers, they were restricted. So it's like, bankers were very useful at the time. And I just do find it funny that it's like, that's negative stereotype. It's not its origin is not negative. It's and not about the Jews. It's about Christians. And as far as the idea that, oh, well, that high interest rate was usury, it's like, maybe in some cases, yeah, but not necessarily all. Because it's not like they're forcing you to take the loan. It is you would choose to take the loan or not. But it might be that's the only place you can get the loan. And it's business. Okay, wait, where's that one thing? Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay. He continues on. Therefore I must say, as I hope for mercy, I can have no other notion of all the other governments that I see or know, that they are a conspiracy of the rich, who, on pretense of managing the public, only pursue their private ends and devise all the ways and arts they can find out. So again, this is that critical money theory that he believes that, oh, they're wealthy, therefore they're going to do all this stuff to benefit themselves. That's exactly what critical money theory would be. So yeah, kind of like with critical race theory, that the whole 1619 farce with and I do have a book over there. It's over there, and I read it a year or two ago, going through how a lot of that stuff, it had been debunked already at the time that the 1619 project was written, and that a lot of it is also just ignoring half the information as well. It's nonsense. But that's what critical race theory would do. Is it focuses that, hey, this is what it is all based on, because we're only envisioning things through the lens of race, that it is the critical element. Raphael's, the critical element is money, is wealth, is property. Okay? It's all the same kind of concept there. It's false, but that's how some people view it. I'm not really sure what... and also the whole, who on the pretense of managing the public only pursue their private ends. It's like, okay, so you might be able to claim that the magistrates and such in Utopia are not doing things for the private ends. We don't know. You've never given an example otherwise, but the priests at least are exempt from stuff. So, and why is it not a conspiracy amongst them? You could describe any government as being a conspiracy amongst the politicians. It's like, what's your point? And the fact that they can, hey, your religion, we don't recognize that. Hey, you're not allowed to practice it this way. Hey, the magistrates, we get to decide what your punishment is, because that's not prescribed by law. It's like all that stuff. It's like it is far more conspiracy than a rule of law nation, regardless of if some of that is to promote the wealthy. And then we also have this, which again is that whole kind of critical money theory. Who does not see that the frauds, thefts, robberies, quarrels, tumults, contentions, seditions, murders, treacheries, I want you to remember those three, and witchcrafts, which are indeed rather punished than restrained by the severities of law, would all fall off if money were not any more valued by the world. So this is him trying to argue that. Seditions, murders, and treacheries. How does Utopia deal with war? What's the first thing they do? They put bounties on the prince of their enemy. So the leader of their enemies. Well, actually, the leaders of their enemy. So they immediately go to murder and treachery, because they want the people there to betray their leaders and kill them or capture them to turn over to Utopia. As far as sedition goes, they would also be like, oh, yeah, that prince has a brother. Let's talk to that brother. Maybe we can promote him to challenge the prince, take over that nation, then end the war that way, because he's going to be our friend then. Sedition. Utopia is guilty of these very things. And even if you want to be like, oh, well, that's in the context of war, it's like, so in the context of war, their morality ceases to be? Doesn't sound like they're very strong in their morals, then, does it? And it's also as though these crimes, these amoral actions, are only ever committed for the benefit of money. Yeah, that's not true. I'm saying, how many murders have there been that have just been crimes of passion, killing somebody because they're trying to take your wife or something, or touching your kids, something like that. And it's like, no, No, that's got nothing to do with money, nor with property. Hey. Yeah, and if that blessing thing called money. Oh, hang on. Let me just. Oh yeah. So this is him also trying to claim that, in various nations, if they have a famine that goes for a year, and so many people die because starve to death, you may find that the rich will still have in their silos much food. That if only they had distributed that, no one would have died. Is what they claim there, which is not necessarily true. I mean, there's no reason to believe that there would be that much there. But he tries to claim here that if that blessed thing called money, which is pretended to be invented for procuring them, was not really the only thing that obstructed their being procured. So basically he's trying to claim that the wealthy are keeping that food for themselves because, well, the poor don't have the ability to buy the food from them. So this is rejecting the possibility that these people would be charitable. And there's no reason to believe that. Why do you think they wouldn't be charitable? I mean, it's very reasonable that they would be charitable. Or it would also be reasonable that the government, the state, could be like, the king could be like, you got food, right? Yeah, okay. We can't pay you right now. But I will write you an IOU for the value of that grain. Not necessarily all of it, but a good portion of it to feed the people. There'd be plenty of wealthy people that'd be like, yeah, okay. No problem. And they might even never really call in that IOU either. That would be very possible. It's like, okay, so they can get paid back. But it's like, yeah, we'll give that away. But it's just... It's that critical money theory kind of thing. But we also get this, that, oh my god, it's such an amusing contradiction. Okay, so I have to go back a little bit for the full context of the highlight. And I cannot think but the sense of every man's interest added to the authority of Christ's commands, who, as he was infinitely wise, knew what was best and was not less good in discovering it to us, would have drawn all the world over to the laws of the Utopians. Okay, so just hold on to that thought. If pride, second thought we need to hold on to, that plague of human nature, that source of so much misery, did not hinder it. This statement itself is incredibly prideful. I mean, it's like, if it only weren't for the people's pride to maintain what they have now, they could come over to Utopia, and that's surely what Christ would want. It's like, that is a prideful statement. It is completely a prideful statement. You're claiming that your beliefs are validated by Jesus Christ. Okay? And it's not like that he's arguing that this is true, he's just stating it. Okay? He's not presenting things. And it's also like some of the stuff, it's like father against son, mother against daughter. I don't remember what else, but Jesus, the whole I came with a sword thing. He did come to divide people, but Utopia's own laws, hey, you got the one dude who's really zealous, trying to bring people over to it by pointing out, hey, you're going to be damned if you don't. We punish him, we banish him. It's like, Jesus would have been one of the people banished. Just. But yeah, this is itself an incredibly prideful statement. But he's blaming pride for why it'll never happen. It's like, dude, you're guilty of it. It does try to go on to claim that pride is actually measuring your happiness by how miserable you can make people feel by showing off what you have. Not pride. At least not today. Maybe 5 centuries ago that was the definition of pride, but I don't think so. To me, pride is more so claiming that which is not yours. Or claiming authority. So in this case, he's claiming the authority that he can say what Christ would and would not agree with. That is prideful, okay? It's like that is. Because it is not, he's just making this claim. It's not as though he's a studied theologian. He's made too many mistakes. That he can humbly assert this, okay? That there is no guidance from the teachings of Christ, from the Gospels, that would lead to this. He's never made that argument. And I have no reason to believe he could. He's just stating this. He is himself making a prideful statement. While also saying it's pride that's hindering progress here. So yeah, it's just... At the end of this, Raphael makes an end of speaking, and it does even have, because this is from Moore's perspective, the many things occurred to me, both concerning the manners of the laws of that manners and laws of the people that seemed very absurd, as well as in the way of making war, as in the notions of religion and divine matters, together with several other particulars, and basically saying that, oh yeah, there's so many things that he was saying that I don't think are right. It's like, that sounds absurd, but it's also like he probably finding contradictions like I've been finding him saying throughout all this, perhaps poorly, but likely poorly, but still. Yet since I perceived that Raphael was weary, and was not sure whether he could easily bear contradiction, remembering that he had taken notice of some who seemed to think they were bound in honor to support the credit of their own wisdom by finding out something to censure in all the men's inventions besides their own. Basically, he is saying, and that's it does end with that essentially. Well, no, he does also say that at the very end, that there are still some things of Utopia that he does wish, not hope, but wish, as in he doesn't believe it could actually happen, be adopted by other governments. But he is still saying that, yeah, I don't think if I were to start telling him that he's wrong, what he's saying is stupid, or he's contradicting himself, I don't think he'd take well to that, so I shouldn't push him on there. It's like, yeah. Because it goes back to how, like he presented how this one place handled thieves. And so he's presenting the whole thing, and they're like, yeah, we can't possibly do that here. But then the cardinal was like, well, we could try doing it this way. It's like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And he's like, when I suggested it, you thought it was a bad idea, but when he suggested, you think it's a good idea. It's like, he was suggesting how to implement it. You didn't do that, okay? So yeah, he is not one who likes... He's a prideful man. Raphael is completely a prideful man. That he just believes he is right. And sure, he may know a lot, but that doesn't mean that he is wise with it. Because then he should be recognizing some of these flaws. He should be recognizing, like, just in this chapter, the whole contradictions about the whole, hey, yeah, you can practice whatever religion you want, you just can never practice it publicly. And even when you are here with us, practicing our religion, that means, if we excommunicate you, then hey, we can still politically punish you. It's like, I guess technically I should give this a recommendation. It's tricky. I actually want to give it two. I want to give it two different ones. Well, one in the fail to recommend and one in the recommend. I'm just trying to think the best way to put it. Yeah, okay. Let me just write this in. And what do I... I'm just trying to think, what do I want to give for the other? In the failed recommend. Yeah, I think that's fair. Okay. So yeah, two different recommendations with a very significant qualifier here. With it being a -1, so negatively flavored failure to recommend, so that kind of leaning towards it's not worth reading it. But I'm not actually saying that. It's leaning towards there. if you are looking to just read it to enjoy and to pull something from, like, just reading it straight, reading it directly, I don't think it's worth your time. I'm not saying it is a waste of time. I'm just saying, But if you are interested in reading it critically, as in critiquing it, not critically like CRT kind of stuff, not like that, but to read it and to recognize, and read it with the intent of recognize that, hey, yeah, some of the stuff is stupid. Some of the stuff doesn't make sense. That's not how the world works. That's not how people work. Then I'd give it a straight recommendation, because it's 1984, I would say, is better. But it is, both are an example of something that can be worth reading to just see how certain political thought it can exist when described in a fictional society. And also, especially with Utopia, because of how old it is, seeing how some of this stuff still exists today. Not just, some of what Utopia describes is what people think is achievable, and it's like, it's not, for various reasons. But also just how Raphael tries to argue things, like, much earlier. Not so much argument once he actually got into describing Utopia, but earlier, where it's like, and I said it then, he meanders, and he's making arguments that are recognizably faulty if you have enough background knowledge. Like, the whole, it's wrong to execute the thieves because, thou shalt not kill. It's like, well, it's actually thou shalt not murder, so that you got that problem. It's not thou shalt not kill, and there's also all authority on earth still comes from God, so you are to still respect government authority. So if the government does decide that, hey, this is something we should execute you for, it's like, well, technically that means it's allowed. You can still object to it, and I would object to it, but I'd be using better reasons than this guy has, because his reasons were bad. His reasons were faulty. Even I can point out, yeah, don't do that. That doesn't hold up. Don't argue that. So it's like, if you are, and that does make it interesting to read. And that is for somebody who would be recognizing those issues. I say, yes, definitely go ahead and read. And if, I wonder, there probably are commented versions of Utopia, where somebody's put in a commentary showing that, hey, this is wrong for this reason, this is wrong in this way. Those would be fascinating to read. And that then would probably just be in that straight recommended category. I wouldn't have the the fail to recommend. I wouldn't have that at all. Because say, okay, for you to learn from, yes, absolutely, I would recommend this. Because it is, you might find it very interesting, even if you were somebody who would agree with some of the stuff in Utopia, but you're still critically minded enough, you might still read through it and find that, I'd make this argument, but now that I'm seeing it here, it doesn't really work. It might be you find the faults in his arguments and realize they're yours, so then you start trying to strengthen your own, which maybe you'll see yourself changing your opinion, or at least or maybe not. Instead of leaving your opinion, you may strengthen it, which is still a good thing. Like, either way. So, yeah. It's one of those funny things, because right now I'm tired enough that I feel like I can't quite get the thought of, do I have anything more to say? I do know that this one has kind of been all over the place, this video. Sorry. So, yeah, I think, but no, I don't think I've got anything more to say, so yeah, I'll stop the recording. Not sure, I don't know what the next book is I want to cover. I got ideas. I got several on the list. I'm not sure when I will be getting to it again, because I want to because I'm changing how I do this a little bit as far as the scheduling goes. This is going to be last assigned reading video coming out until I can start and finish the written review for this. And then I may still at that point take a break to be able to work on some other stuff. Just because I want to be able to write my story, and this stuff takes up time, and I only have so much free time. All right. See you next time, whenever that is.